Meet Matthew. He's in his office, blinds half closed, watching one of his department heads wipe away tears. "I'm trying," she whispers, "but I just can't keep doing this." Matthew nods slowly with a heavy heart. He wants to offer something comforting, something helpful, but all he can manage to say is, "I know." And he really does know. As executive director of a nonprofit that offers support for families that are looking for housing, mental health support, low-income families, Matthew is no stranger to pressure. The work is meaningful. It matters, but it's also relentless. His inbox is a war zone. Nights and weekends blur together. Boundaries feel like a luxury that he just can't afford. And he's seeing the same story play out with his team. High achievers running on fumes. Their empathy is endless, but their energy isn't. The mission hasn't changed, but the people that are carrying it out are starting to break. And he's offered wellness webinars and mental health days, but burnout is baked into the culture now. No one wants to slow down because they're going to feel guilty, especially Matthew. And how do you help your team who's drowning, who's underwater, to come up for a breath of fresh air when you yourself haven't figured out how to do so? Today, I'm joined by Cait Donovan, one of the leading voices in burnout prevention and recovery. Cait is an internationally recognized speaker, host of Fried, the Burnout Podcast, and creator of the Burn Bold framework, used by companies worldwide to teach boundaries, to build resilience, and to dismantle burnout culture from the inside out. She's also translated neuroscience into real-world strategies used by companies like PepsiCo, Clorox, and Forbes magazine, proving that burnout isn't a personal failing. It's a systems issue that any leader can change. And I'm excited to hear how Cait would help someone like Matthew, someone who is mission-driven, and he's trying to keep it all together while quietly unraveling himself. My name is Jay Abbasi, and welcome to Unstuck. Real people, real stories, real solutions. While the details are changed to protect anonymity, what you just heard is based on a true story of challenges that come up in the real world. And we discuss how to navigate these environments with practical tips to help you get unstuck and build a more fulfilling, impactful, and balanced life and career. So Cait, I went on your website and I got curious because there's something on there that suggests that you have a story to tell in regards to your experience with burnout, because you said you lived it firsthand. And I know that this is something that's a topic that's near and dear to your heart, but I was hoping that we can maybe learn a little bit about your burnout story and what happened that led to this being a passion that you talk about now.
Yeah, of course. Burnout absolutely shook me, took me by massive surprise. I didn't know what it was when it happened to me. And it wasn't until 5 or 6 years later, when I was still not feeling great, but couldn't figure out why, I read an article by Harvard Business Review. And it was like, here's all the things with burnout. And I was going down the list going, check, 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 check. Oh no. Check. Oh no. And I got really confused to start with. My profession, my master's degree, is in Chinese medicine. I'm an acupuncturist and an herbalist. So all I did all day was work on other people's stress, because the study of acupuncture is basically how different stressors affect the system. Stressors from any part of the world, in any holistic sense, internal, external, whatever. And I thought, I know I've been meditating since I was 18. I exercise, I eat well. Like, this couldn't have happened to me. I'm also a massive nerd. I read more than is probably healthy. And my husband was doing, also a nerd, was doing a postgraduate degree at Cambridge at the time. We were living in Europe and he was doing a distance degree at Cambridge University. So I went into the Cambridge University library and I downloaded everything that had been written on burnout ever in a research format. And I read it. It took me a year. And the whole time, and I mean, when I tell you it's what we're recording right now, it's the middle of the year, I've probably read 50 books already without even thinking about it. So there was a decent amount of material. I was reading things that were like sort of related on the side. I went through everything possible. And as I was going through it, I kept thinking, this isn't about me. No, this research isn't about me either. This research is about doctors in a hospital system. This research is about teachers in a school system. This research is about corporate workers in a corporate system. And there was this through line through a lot of them that said 80% of burnout is the workplace's fault. And I thought, I'm the workplace. I'm the workplace. Shoot.
Yeah. So what did that make you realize in regards to the things that you had to maybe take either ownership of, or what you had to come to as a realization given your situation?
The first thing that happened for me in that was a realization that I was not going to be able to figure this out by myself. One of the reasons I ended up in burnout is because I have a tendency to hyper-independence. This is a trauma response from my childhood. Do it alone. Don't ask anybody for help. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. If you suffer, even better. If it's hard, even better. So I had this mega hyper-independence, and I looked at this situation and I thought, I have more knowledge than probably 98% of the world on stress and the body. And I still ended up here, which means I cannot get through this on my own. This was the first time I really, as an adult, chose to let people outside me help. My first stop was therapy. And the thing that I added on top of therapy was something called proprioceptive writing, which is a particular style of writing. There's a whole routine with it. You put on Baroque classical music, set a timer for 25 minutes, light a candle, and you start to free flow write. And every time you get to something that's a little bit generic, like I was so overwhelmed, you ask yourself the proprioceptive question, or you make the proprioceptive statement, which is, when I say overwhelmed, what I mean is. So it's a really one of the best exercises I've ever seen for getting granular and emotionally. It's one of the best emotional intelligent exercises that you'll ever come across. So I started to get really granular about what my experience was, instead of giving these overall, oh, I'm stressed. Oh, I'm overwhelmed. Oh, I'm busy. Well, when I say busy, what am I really saying? I was only working 25 hours a week at that time. So I wasn't actually busy. So what am I really saying? So I dug into that. At some point, I added some coaching. And at another point later on, I added some nutritionist. So I went through a lot of support during that period. And here's what I found out. Number one, I thought that if I wasn't helping everyone all the time, that I wasn't a good person. So not only was I over serving my patient base, so I was seeing about 200 patients a month. So I've done about 30,000 acupuncture treatments in my career. And in that number of patients, they were all getting some form of like semi-therapy plus life coaching plus acupuncture. And I was only charging for the acupuncture. Right. So it's hard to see 60 people a week-ish on an ongoing basis that you feel like you need to provide everything for. In addition, I was doing that while I was abroad. So I was living in either Warsaw or Prague for the majority of this, which meant that I was often the only medical professional that people had regular contact with that spoke their native language. So all the expat community that was English speaking, I was their only sort of doctor that could speak to them fluently, which made me feel a lot of responsibility. And I was also doing things like walking down the street in Prague and seeing somebody with a map and being like, how can I help you get where you need to go? Nobody was stopping me and asking me questions. I was interjecting myself into situations all day, every day, solving everyone's problems. So number one, if I wasn't doing enough for other people, then I wasn't valuable. If I wasn't getting gratitude, then I wasn't valuable. And number two, when you're in that constant state of always serving other people, there's this insidious thing that happens that no one wants to talk about, but it's self-abandonment and self-neglect. Because I was in good shape and exercised and ate well, I would have never assumed that I was engaging in self-neglect. But I had absolutely zero contact with my emotional life.
So would you say that there was suppression? Was it suppression or avoidance?
Avoidance.
Avoidance. So things were bubbling up that you would avoid because you were prioritizing serving others.
Yes, at all times.
Yeah.
If somebody else had a need, that need was being met. At that time, somebody asked me, it might have been my therapist. She said, yeah, but what is it that you need? And I looked at her like, you know, when a dog is a little confused and tilts its head, I looked at her like that and I was like, I don't need anything. What do you mean? What could I possibly need from I don't need anything from anybody. That's what? I don't need anything from anybody. That's wild to say.
And everyone or people who are listening to this, I really encourage you to consider that this is something that happens so often where you can so easily be unaware that this is a pattern you're in, right? I mean, like
I did not know.
Right. You don't know because you're just so hyper focused on, I want to serve, I want to give, I want to be there for others. And on the surface, that sounds great. But if it's at the sacrifice of your own needs, it could lead to what you experienced.
And I didn't think in the beginning that it was a sacrifice of my own needs because I didn't allow myself to have any. So if I didn't have any needs, then I didn't have anything that needed to be met, which meant I could be available for everybody else.
When you were describing that sense of I need to help everyone in order for me to feel valuable, it sounds like you had to address some beliefs that you were holding on to.
You think?
Yeah. So how did you go through that? How did you?
A lot of it was actually not dealing with them directly. Okay. A lot of them was through the proprioceptive writing process. And one of the things that we work on a lot in my business that's a little different than most places is we do not focus on gratitude when people are deep in burnout because it's very hard to feel. But the emotion that I kept coming back to when I was going through this proprioceptive writing was resentment. I kept finding out that underneath I was resentful. And I really did not want to admit that at first because resentment is like not a pretty emotion to have. And when you're resentful, you're blaming other people and you're pushing things on other people. And when I started to dig into the resentment, I noticed that if I could reverse engineer the situations where I was feeling resentful, I could figure out where my boundaries were too weak and where I was self-neglecting.
Okay.
So I reverse engineered resentment is how I did it. So I started to kind of go around my world. So I was on the tram one day. I took the tram every day to work in Prague. That's normal. Everybody takes the tram because you can't park anywhere. And the tram system works beautifully and costs 150 euros a year. So why would you buy a car when you can take a tram for 150 euros a year and get everywhere you need to get? So I would get on the tram, and I lived in an older part of Prague where a lot of the population was well beyond retirement. Mm-hmm. And I would be on the tram and I could see coming up to the next stop, there'd be a woman who's like 96 waiting to get on the tram. Just standing at the stop waiting to get on the tram. And I would immediately start looking at the seat that people are supposed to vacate when somebody who needs a seat on the tram gets on. If you're pregnant, disabled, elderly, etc., you're supposed to get this. So I'm already self-abandonment completely, right? I don't exist. I don't have any needs. I am so focused rudely. I'm not saying this is correct. This is incredibly rude, but I didn't know that at the time. I thought it was kind at the time. I'm looking at that person sitting in that seat and I'm thinking, you better be getting up for Grammy. Like you better be moving your tush when Grammy gets on this tram. And then most often they wouldn't. And I would be the martyr savior who would go over and fix the situation, right? Can you please get up so Granny can sit down? First of all, I don't know if that person is able. You can't tell by looking at people often. So and I was an acupuncturist. I was treating people with invisible disabilities all the time, but I was making all sorts of assessments and adjustments and judgments about that other person. Then Granny's getting on. I'm making judgments about her. This woman's probably been riding the tram by herself for 90 years. And I think she needs my help to get a seat. She could probably just knock somebody with her cane and move on if she wanted to. Like, why? What was happening that I thought that I had to save this? So when I was in that situation and I would start to notice that I was feeling resentful towards that person that's sitting down in that seat, I started to think, okay, well, what is it that I actually need right now? That's how I started to get into, what do I need? Do I need to be involved in this? Am I actually helping this situation? Am I being kind and thoughtful? What's really happening here? And what I found was sometimes we were exercising a lot at that time. We did a 6-day trek on cross-country skis with like packs attached to our hips across northern Finland for 6 days from hut to hut, melting snow for water, rehydrating food. Like, we were pretty intense athletes at that time. And sometimes it would be really early and I would be really tired and my back would hurt. Mm-hmm. And I needed a seat. Yeah. I was tired. I wanted to sit down. It's not always an option. You don't always get that option on a tram. There's not always place. But I would be trying to solve that problem for someone else because it was what I needed. And so I started looking into it and saying, am I meddling because I have an unmet need? And if I do, what is it? There's an expression in Polish that when you translate it sounds like, here, wear this sweater, I'm cold.
I like that.
Right.
So okay. So this is, I'm curious as to where that then led you, because you recognize that within yourself. And then you, of course, continued on your journey of being able to share this message with others. But of course, I'm sure you found that everyone has a different version of what led them to burnout. But what are some of the things that you found to then be commonalities? Like, what if you pull from what you experience, what do you then see in other people where it's like, okay, here are the trends, here are the patterns that I'm seeing?
Right. So I actually did another degree when I moved back to the States because I wanted to figure this out. Mm-hmm. And what I've determined over time is that there are 6 buckets of things that can increase what I refer to as our burnout vulnerability. So the most common bucket that everyone talks about, that there's lots of research about, all of the research on burnout is related to this one bucket currently, almost. It's shifting a little bit. The first bucket is work.
Yeah.
So your work environment, your job strain, whether you have any camaraderie at work, whether there's fairness, whether there's recognition, whether there's all sorts of things that we all know when we're building a positive work culture are important. It's all the things. Okay, fine. Work is a bucket. A lot of times the conversation stops there, but there's 5 other buckets. The next bucket is culture. So as much as a workplace has a culture, a city has a culture, a state has a culture, a part of the country has a culture. And where I grew up, most of my friends were first-generation immigrants. So they were balancing between 2 cultures that they had to deal with, the culture of their family and the culture of their assumed country, like the country that they live in now in the US. So culture can be either supportive or not. The American culture is not supportive when it comes to burnout. 2 of our top 10 values in this country are hard work and individualism.
Yeah.
Like, what? We've moved away from the collective. We don't have as much church, community centers, things like that. That's all falling right now. And I don't think church is the solution, but the community around church, I think, is something that people are really missing now, the community around. And we have not found a really good substitute for that. And then we have all the isms, racism, homophobism, et cetera, that have an overall effect and that are baked into culture as well. So culture is a whole nother bucket.
I wanted to jump in on what you said there about American values, hard work and individualism. Because what if left unchecked? Because there's nothing wrong with working hard, right? But if left unchecked, what that then leads to is isolation. Isolation along with disconnection.
Exactly.
Because whenever I think of why someone is burnt out, that word always ends up coming to the surface. That is disconnection. There's a disconnection to self. There's a disconnection to one's values. There's disconnection to something meaningful, purposeful. That's really the underlying cause of why we feel burnt out. What are your thoughts on this?
That's part of it. That's part of it. And a lot of that is driven by culture.
Yeah.
Right. So I have people in my life who are so stuck on the fact that hard work is a value that if their work isn't hard, they complain about it being hard anyway because they don't think they deserve to earn unless they're working hard for it.
Yeah, well, you see it in a lot of, I see it in a lot of social media and posts as well, where that hustle culture, like you have to get after it. You have to, the 10X rule, work harder than everybody else. And that's how you're going to achieve. And well, sure, you work that hard, you might get that result.
Maybe.
But maybe. But will you be happy? Will you be fulfilled? Will you enjoy the ride? And if not, then what was the point of it all?
Just to say that you worked hard.
Yeah. Just to align with this value. Yeah.
Exactly. I had someone call me recently or book time on my calendar recently. And she said, "Thank you so much for taking the time. I know that you're really busy." And I said, how do you know that? How do you know I'm really busy? I'm not really busy. When I see my calendar getting full, I block slots off so that I have white space because I don't actually believe in busy. But it's interesting that you think that you owe me gratitude for taking time out of my busy schedule for you. I wouldn't have offered you space if I didn't have it to give. That's the old me. Would have offered you space that she didn't have to give. This me doesn't do that. And she was like, and she's a burnout professional. And she said, "Oh my goodness, I never thought about it that way. You think you're saying this thing to be polite, but it's like, no, you don't know that I'm busy. That's not true in my world. I'm not busy. I work as much as I want to, and that's it."
And what's interesting is she, without maybe intention, is projecting what she believes is the norm.
Exactly. And probably if she dug deeper, she might find that she's a little resentful about being busy. And that what she needs is a little more time. Yeah. Right? Like, so there's always layers to it. So we did the work bucket, we did the culture bucket. The next bucket is family and early childhood experiences. So it's really, this is the second part of burnout that's actually fairly well researched, that children that grow up with secure attachments are much less likely to end up burnt out than children that grow up with anxious or avoidant or disordered attachments. So how your parents treated you as an infant up until the age of 6 is incredibly important for your later burnout vulnerability. This is, to me, like critical information. This changed everything for me because what it taught me was the chances that I was going to burn out were really, really high, and I was probably never going to be able to avoid it. Burnout was going to be a part of my life, like it or not, because I didn't have the skills that I needed to buffer it at all. And I didn't have something that falls into the next bucket. I didn't have enough of a sense of self to understand that the things that my body was feeling, the emotions that I was feeling, needed attention. So we have the work bucket, the culture bucket, we have the family bucket, and then we have the health bucket. When you grow up with a significant amount of adverse childhood experiences, they're called ACEs. For those of you that are like, "Oh my God, I know what that is." Yes, that's what we're talking about. When you grow up like that, or when you have a parent who genetically has a differently shaped brain, there's a part of your brain that doesn't develop fully. And that part of your brain is responsible for something known as interoception, which means internal sept internal, sept is sensing, feeling. So feeling your internal body, right? And if you don't have a very high level of interoception, then you're not going to meet your body's most basic needs on a regular basis. Your body will then interpret its life, its entire life, as unsafe because its basic needs are not being met. When the basic needs are not met for an extended period of time and you are unsafe, you will have a chronically activated nervous system, sympathetic nervous system, which will just roll and roll and roll and roll and roll its way right into burnout. And you will not notice until you are so exhausted, your production is falling so hard, you hate everybody around you, you're acting like a jerk, you can't help yourself, and everything starts to fall apart. You're not going to notice ahead of time because that part of your brain didn't develop properly.
This is crucial. I mean, if we don't have the ability to notice upstream when this begins, then how can we ever fix it? And so what I hope you're about to share, and I hope there's some good news here, is that anyone can cultivate this faculty with the right practices or the right strategies. Yes. Is that true?
Exactly. And it's not even hard. We'll get to that. And it's not even that hard, but understanding that that's part of it is one of the reasons, and people hate when I say this, but I don't really care. I think burnout prevention, unless you've already gone through burnout and recovered once and you're preventing it a second time, I think burnout prevention is a waste of most people's time. Because if you do not have this skill, you're not listening to the burnout prevention talks because you don't think it's about you.
Yeah.
It's really hard to reach people that don't think they need the help.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that old, I use this analogy quite often. It's like, I'm wearing blue tinted glasses and I see the whole world as blue, and you're telling me that I need to be able to see it as red. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's blue. It's all blue, right? I don't even know that I have the glasses on, right? Exactly. I'm not even aware that I'm wearing the glasses. So the first step then would be to notice that you are, or basically essentially to build up that awareness and cultivate it, which I'm curious to hear about how here in a bit. But okay, so we have the 4, we have work, we have culture, we have family, we have health.
And the health bucket also involves any sort of chronic illnesses, any sort of neurodivergence, any sort of mental illness. Any of that will make you more vulnerable to burnout. So that bucket is bigger than just that thing, but holds all those things. The next thing is traits and states. So the traits and states are things that you developed most of the time as coping mechanisms to the other things that happened earlier in your life. So, my father was a drug addict when I was a kid, got sober when I was 6. But part of him not being able to meet my needs turned me hyper independent and said, well, I'm not supposed to need anybody. I can't count on the adults in my life. I can't rely on people. So therefore, I will rely only on myself forever. The other traits and states that end up in this pile, it's hyper independence, perfectionism, people pleasing, lack of boundaries, inability to assess and really understand your own values, all this kind of stuff where you're just like, you're acting, you're meddling, you're involved in other people's stuff, you're doing things that aren't quite right, but they're just how you've always acted and you can't feel like you can't really fix them. So that's traits and states. And the last bucket is environment. And when I say environment, I'm talking about the emotional and cultural environment is covered in culture and work. When I'm talking about this environment, I'm talking about access to green spaces, whether or not you see dawn and dusk light, whether or not you use your phone until 2 a.m. and you have that blue light in your eyes, whether or not you have plants in your space, if you have animals, if you have a room, your bedroom is painted a color that you love, if there's too many sharp corners that are not taken care of in your home, if your knives are stored poorly, if all these things that can make your body react to stress, to say like, this is not safe and comfortable for me, therefore I am stressed, and therefore I am going to act like this, I'm going to respond like this. Yeah. So our environments have a really incredible, one of my clients, she said she had never put her pictures up in her bedroom. I said, how long have you lived there? She said, 5 years. I said, you will not book another call with me until your walls are painted and those photos are up. And she called me a month later. It took her a month to get it done. And she said, I can't believe how much better I'm sleeping.
It's amazing. We think it's a crazy illusion that we're under. We think that we're here and the environment is out there, like we're
Yeah,
separate from it.
we are
But
not.
that's not true. It's just not true. We are a part of it. It is a part of us. It's this two-way
That,
street. Yeah, right. It's a two-way street. It's constantly what we are consuming, and it is a part of how we feel every day. Like an example, Kate, like I'm here in my office, and
Mhm.
my office, I do actually have the blinds closed right now because it's so hot that
Yeah,
if I left
same.
them open, I
Yeah.
think it would be a problem. But on most days, and especially when I'm recording, I have the blinds open. I have beautiful scenery around me. I have sunlight coming in. When
Mhm.
we bought this house, we had a choice. I could have put this office in the basement. I went down there. I said, "Oh, it's a nice big space. I'll have plenty of space to make a nice big desk." But I'm like, "Wait a minute. There's not a window in sight. It's going to feel like a dungeon down here."
Yep.
And I knew that despite the larger space, what I initially thought would be the right, I knew it was not going to work out. And I'm so grateful that I decided to use this space, because otherwise I could have fallen into that pattern. I could have been at the risk of burning out because I'm not getting any light. I'm not getting any nature around me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So those are the 6 buckets. So the more things you have in each bucket, the more likely you are to be vulnerable to burnout. Of course, all of these buckets, we call these BRFs, burnout risk factors.
Mm-hmm.
We also have BPFs, burnout protection factors. They work just like SPFs, right? Sun protection factor,
Yeah.
burnout protection factor. So there's no judgment. This is really critical. There is no judgment for the level of BPFs that you need in your life. So I am like the whitest white girl with freckles, which means I need an SPF of at least 50 at all times because I walk outside and turn into a lobster,
Right.
right? There is
Okay.
no morality attached to that.
Right.
It's
Right.
I just need higher SPF than some other people.
It's just what is. It's just what is.
Just what
Yeah.
is. If your BRFs, if those 6 buckets are pretty full, you need more BPFs than the average person, and that's fine. You're allowed to have as many as you need. A lot of the times, the BPFs will be the opposite of the thing, right? So if you did not form a secure attachment as a child, it's time to do some therapy and figure out how to form secure attachments as an adult. If you
Yeah.
know, we could break it down one by one. That would take us 19 hours. But the fact of the matter is, most of the time, it's just the opposite. But when it comes to the interoceptive part of the health bucket, because this is what you want to know, so I'm going to just go right into it.
Please do.
The easiest, the unofficial hashtag of my podcast is pee when you need to pee.
Okay.
Because this is how we start.
Okay.
You have to very intentionally pay attention to a signal from your body that you typically override. So if you've realized that you have to go to the bathroom, but then you write 3 more emails, disservice. Get up and go to the bathroom. If you know that you're thirsty, but in order to get water, you have to go downstairs or upstairs to your kitchen and it feels like way too much work, so you just don't bother. No. When you're thirsty, you have to go get water. So we call this, in my practice, we call this foundational self-care. The stupid things that you think you don't need to think about because everybody does them, but that you don't really do. Eat when you're hungry, drink when you're thirsty, pee when you need to pee. Rest when you're tired, move when you're anxious, right? Like just the very, very basic respond to the things that your body is telling you. That's step 1.
And what I like about it too is it's overriding what I often hear people say, well, but I do prioritize myself. Or they say it, they do the lip service, but they don't act on it. And
Right.
what you're saying is step 1 is it needs to be an action that really proves to your own subconscious that
Yes.
you are paying attention to your own needs and acting on it.
Listen, I've got you should be the message that your body gets from you in order for your nervous system to get to a place where it feels safe and doesn't have to be activated all the time.
Yeah.
Listen, I've got you.
I like that. And what I also, tell me what you think of this. I often share this with my clients too, which is being able to find ways in which you create some associations on your daily routine things to bring your attention back into your own body. So in other words, it's like, for example, I've heard people say when I walk through a doorway, for me, I've shared this with my audience a lot, which is every time I wash a vegetable, it's just something I don't know what happened. It triggered in me that whenever I'm washing a vegetable, my attention is back into my own body and I'm not thinking and just worrying about what I have to do next. I'm just like noticing how my body feels as I watch the vegetable. In your research, is this something that you think is useful, valuable? Tell me about it.
Yes, 100%. Any way that you can habit stack is always going to be a useful way to put something in your life. The thing that I warn people against is trying to do too many of these things at one time because they think it's simple. Like, honestly, if you need to start with these things, if you're like, actually, maybe I should start paying attention, I want you to only do pee when you need to pee for a month.
Yeah.
Just that for a month. I'm not even kidding. Pay attention long enough for it to become a habit. And of course, there's lots of different research on habits. People are like, it takes 21 days to create a habit. Folks, the research cannot agree on how long it takes to create a habit. It actually seems to depend on how much we enjoy the activity that we are trying to create a habit out of. And it can be anything from nearly immediately to 200 and something days is the longest one that they've found in the research. So it could take up to almost a year to create a habit if it's something that you're like, I really don't know. I know I got to do this. I know I have to. So take a month. You're burnt out. You're 42. You've been burnt out for 5 years. Take a month and pee when you need to pee.
Yeah. I like it because it's, anyone could do this, right? We're not
It's free.
saying this is right. It's free. Doesn't cost you a thing. It's just being intentional. And then the other thing that I thought of as you were just saying that, I actually just put this into my newsletter this past week, but about how to make things more fun. Like, in other words, like, can you create a system for yourself where one, it's not too much, but two, the habit that you're forming, you find a way to enjoy it more. You make it more playful. You don't make it seem like it's this thing it's burden that you have to do.
I had a client actually give herself gold stars for every time she went to the bathroom.
I like that. That's great.
It's great. Yeah. But the part of when you do this on a regular basis, when you really practice these foundational self-care bits and pieces, the same part of the brain that's responsible for those things is also responsible for noticing your internal world when it comes to temperature and emotions and all sorts of other things. So if you pee when you need to pee for a month, and then you drink when you're thirsty for a month, and then you start stacking these things on top of one another, this crazy thing happens that you get better at emotional granularity and regularity and regulation by not changing anything at all in your emotional world. Folks, if you pee when you need to pee for a month, you will be able to better manage your emotional life without doing anything.
And it's all about that faculty of, I'm going to say the word right, interoception. Interoception. Which is right. Which is essentially increasing that faculty of being aware of one's own experience, which will then help you to more effectively manage through whatever disruptive emotions are coming up. So it's like, in other words, you don't have to get into the mess of all the emotions, is what you're saying, right?
Especially not in the beginning, because if you're burnt out, you're probably pretty resentful, pretty frustrated. You're probably blowing up at your family on a regular basis. You're likely angry and or you're completely numb. And then you have Sally on Instagram telling you to do a gratitude journal. Yeah. And you're like, I am not feeling it, Sally. Like, I'm grateful for my family, but you're rolling your eyes as you write it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't even have access to the emotions in the beginning. And if you don't have access to them, then why are we forcing attention there?
Yeah.
People like to think about burnout as a mental health issue, but burnout is a whole life issue. It's involved in everything. So why don't we start where it's easy and give you some tools that will make the other things easier without addressing them directly? This part of your brain when it starts to regrow, because the brain is plastic and it can regrow, and when you start to engage this part of your brain and it becomes more active, everything gets easier because your ability to be aware of yourself, of your internal states, goes up. When that goes up, then you make better decisions for yourself because you know why you're doing it. If you are someone who has inadvertently chosen self-abandonment and self-neglect for the benefit of others, which means pretty much anybody who's female, because that's what we're taught to do. That's in your American, well, not just American, a lot of European countries are the same. This is what we're taught to do. It's not your fault that you don't have these interoceptive skills. It's not your fault that your stress response is offline because it's saying, hi, you haven't paid attention to me in 27 years. Where have you been? And then you start showing up and you say, no, I've got you. Don't worry. I've got you. I'm back. I'm here. I've got you.
Yeah. And that button's available for anyone to be able to push. Like, it's not like, this is something that only a select few have access to. And I'm glad you brought gratitude back up again, because I agree with the idea that we shouldn't just try to force people into some positive state when they're not ready for it. So a phrase that I often use is, I meet you where you are. And what I'm hearing is, meet yourself where you are.
First and foremost.
Right. You gotta, we can't, if I'm here at the bottom of this pit and you're trying to use a tool to try to get somebody to the top of a mountain when they're all the way down in this pit, it's not going to work. You're not meeting them where they are. And the same thing with yourself. You have to meet yourself where you are. First, get a sense of this terrain. Then gradually you can pull yourself out.
Exactly. And doing these higher level consciousness type practices, I believe in them. I'm a meditator. I mean, I believe in them and I think they're important, but you can't do them without a base.
Yeah.
You don't have access to them without a base. You've got to build it up first. I believe in gratitude as a practice, just not when you're burnt out.
Right. Now, let's touch a little bit on Matthew's story, because much of what we talked about here does apply to what he's going through. Right. And what I also want to get a sense of too, because in Matthew's case, okay, he learns this for himself, and he's in a position to try to create a work environment where burnout is not such a problem in the with the employees he has. So what are some ways in which you would say to somebody who's in that position to ensure that there aren't so many people in that environment burning out? How do you help someone essentially coach the coach here?
Yeah. So this is when I was reading through Matthew's story, I was really happy because I have a Matthew in my life. I work with nonprofits a lot, and I work with CEOs of nonprofits a lot. I work with CEOs of heads of state nonprofits. So this is a really comfortable space for me. And in Matthew's case, we really do start with either resentment or foundational self-care. One or the other. We don't do them both at once. It's a little bit too much, but one or the other. So I would probably have a conversation with him first to see what was biggest. If resentment is in the front, resentment, frustration, irritation, the anger group basically is at the forefront of what he's going through right now, I would start with that. Because the first thing that resentment will show you is all the things that don't actually need to be done at all in your workplace. Things that you're repeating, we've always done it this way, or we did it like that before, so we're doing it again now, but we haven't checked if it's even worth it. And, so if we look really closely at resentment, we'll find that about 10 to 20% of the things that we're doing on a day-to-day basis, we could eliminate completely and nothing would happen. Almost all of us have at least 10% of our day-to-day things that we're doing that are not adding any value to our lives at all, or to our businesses, or to our companies, or to whatever. So we figure out what those are and we cut them out. That buys Matthew a little bit of energy. That buys Matthew a little bit of space. Then we start looking into, okay, Matthew, let's pee when we have to pee for a minute. Let's get you focused back in on your body. Because one of the things that Matthew's having a problem with is he can't slow down because he feels guilty. Well, he also can't slow down because he doesn't know how he feels and he doesn't realize how bad he needs it. So we need Matthew to get into his body for long enough, for a consistent enough amount of time, for him to be able to notice the signal that this is actually critical. And if he doesn't do it, he will completely break down, which will mean he will be completely useless in his workplace. he won't be able to do anything.
With the part about eliminating, how do you help someone to go through that? Because I'm like, I know that I've worked with people where they're like, no, we definitely need this. It's like they think they need it all.
But they do think they need it all. They don't. We call it life pruning. So we start off with resentment, and we do something I have a mini course that's called the resentment journal. So we go through the resentment journal. Mm-hmm. And the first question in the resentment journal, there's a series of questions that you have to ask every situation to figure out what you need to do with it, so that the resentment, you're not just writing down what you're mad about, you're figuring out what the action is. So the first question that you have to ask of every single thing that you are resentful about doing, this is not about people you are resentful towards, this is about a thing that you are resentful about doing, is, does this thing really truly need to be done? And if so, what value is it adding? And if you can't answer yes and a clear value, we put it in the toss pile. We review the toss pile before we go further, because sometimes we're like, oh, you know what? I didn't realize. I talked to some people and I realized the value is this, and I didn't know that before. Okay, fine. Let's keep that one. Sure. Yeah. So we do a full assessment over it. We're not just like tossing things out willy-nilly. But I had somebody at a conference recently after my talk. We did resentment is your superpower as a keynote, which is my favorite one. It's so fun. And somebody came up to me afterwards and said, you know, the thing that I hate doing most is timesheets. I said, do you have hourly workers? He said, no. Mm-hmm. I said, why do you do timesheets? He said, well, we've always done timesheets. I said, do you need them for anything? And this was right. I paused on purpose. I wasn't I not freeze, everybody. This was the response. He was gaping at me, like jaw open, like, what? I said, well, do you need them for anything? And he said, well, no. I said, well, okay, let's stop doing them. like right away? I said, well, you can wait if you want, but I'm sure your employees hate doing them too, because they feel like you don't trust them and they're being treated like children. So you're increasing their burnout vulnerability and your own for a task that doesn't need to be done in a salaried company.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this?
It's essentially like an audit, like doing a full audit or taking inventory of what it is that you're doing and if it's adding value, as you said. And I think oftentimes there's eliminate is the first thing. I agree with that. And then the other thing too is there could be opportunity to simplify. Like it may just be, right, it's not that the actual... Right. How do you upgrade it in a way to be able to reduce the amount of time needed to
or the amount of friction it takes, time or friction?
Yeah.
Right? Because it might take the same amount of time, but it's made easier by this is little stupid things at home. Like if your knife isn't sharp enough to slice through a tomato, but you make a tomato sandwich every morning for breakfast, then every morning you're starting your day frustrated. Yeah. Get a sharper knife.
Right.
Get a sharper knife and move on.
Right.
Sometimes it will take you the same amount of time to cut the tomato, but you're just not going to be mad about it while you do it.
Now, what is a requirement of that, though, Cait, is for someone to be willing to go and purchase the new knife,
or get it sharpened, or whatever.
Right. And I'm sure
put in front of you like that when you're like, okay, you're resentful. You're resentful about a damn kitchen knife. You can either go to Home Goods today. You don't even need to leave the house. You can order that thing online if you have to. Right. If you are in that much pushback about something like a knife, then we're looking at a bigger problem. Buy the damn knife.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like we have at times, and I hope this wouldn't be the case with Matthew or the clients that you work with, but we do sometimes have certain situations where there's just an unwillingness, and we can only do so much. And someone like Matthew in this story, while he's in a leadership position, I'm sure there are other people, right, that are going to be involved in this. There needs to be that openness and willingness and flexibility. But it isn't so binary where you just, you say it once and then you give up. It's what you're doing here, Cait, is you're really explaining this in a smart, like a skillful way to where it kind of makes you feel stupid to say, I'm not going to buy the knife.
That's kind of the point. If you're really getting
Right.
honest about the resentment, then you're faced with a choice.
Right.
You either continue to start every single one of your days annoyed, and you can make that choice. You're an adult, live your life. I don't care.
Right.
But you have to know and take 100% radical responsibility for the fact that you are choosing to start every single day annoyed. You can no longer blame that on your wife for not getting the knife sharpened, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So you're allowed to not change the thing.
And what we're saying is to take ownership of it. I mean, you have to take ownership of it. Like by taking full ownership of it, for the information to be presented as you presented it, it requires the person to have to take ownership of it.
Yes.
So that's why you're so good at what you do, right? You'll be able to help people to take ownership of it, right? And then at that point, it's your decision. And hopefully people are making the right decisions. You've now done, Cait, all of the work you could do, right? And you've put it in their hands.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I would love to ask you is, if you did have a chance to meet Matthew in this story, and he tells you what he's going through, he tells you about the guilt, he tells you about the challenges with burnout within his company, and you have a chance to ask him a question or two to evoke something in him, where would you start? What would be a question that you'd bring up to him?
Matthew, what are you most disappointed in?
Tell me more. Why do you start there?
Because a lot of times people, especially in the nonprofit world, because we put Matthew's in a nonprofit world in this scenario, right? So Matthew's in a nonprofit world. People are not always going to admit to resentment, anger, and frustration right from the get-go, because oftentimes we take these roles and we work in these jobs because we've seen suffering, we know suffering, and we're trying to help other people. And therefore, we can't be resentful about our work because what we do is good. And if we're mad about it, that means we're bad people.
Yeah.
So I would go down the resentment road with him, because in a leadership position, resentment is the fastest way to get you where you need to go. It's the fastest way. 100% hands down every time. I say that with like no humility at all. I know it's the fastest way. I've never seen anything work like it. And I've been working with people one-on-one since 2005. This is the fastest way to go. But if you can't admit that you have it, we have to start in a place of, where is your heart breaking? What's getting in the way of you fixing what's breaking your heart? What's disappointing to you on this mission? Where is the stuckness?
Yeah.
Sounds like you might be a little mad about that. Let's dig in, right? Like, you have to give people permission to go through their full thing first. So I would start probably by asking about disappointment and heartbreak.
That's powerful. That's powerful stuff. Cait, we could talk for hours, I feel. And I have to be mindful of time. But I would say, for anyone who wants to learn more about the great work, Cait, you're doing, I know you have your podcast, Fried, the Burnout Podcast. Anyone, just do a quick search right now. Look it up. Save it. There's so much more that I know that you have to share with groups on how to avoid burnout, how to work through burnout. And of course, people can learn more about your speaking and stuff directly from there and the great work you're doing. So Cait, thank you so much for taking time today. I'm saying that, I should be saying that. You took the time, but I'm still grateful. I'm still grateful to know you. I'm grateful. So I'm just grateful for this conversation. Not that you've taken the time. I'm just grateful for the conversation. How about that?
Jay, so am I. Thanks so much for having me.
It was so fascinating meeting Cait, because she clearly has done her research. And I really appreciate the thoughtfulness that she put into how she helps people through burnout, given that she went through it, wanting to figure out how to solve it. And now she's incredibly passionate about helping others to be able to overcome it. And so I'm going to do my best to break this down into our 3 insights and our 3 actionable takeaways. The first insight is that underneath it, there's resentment. I thought that it was a perspective I've never heard before that is really useful. She said she reverse engineered her resentment. So resentment was felt, she noticed it, and then she figured out, what is she really resentful about? And in being able to identify what she's resentful about, it then led her to the cause of her burnout, which is needs that were unmet. And then the second insight is to meet those needs. Once you recognize that this is really what's causing it, and for her it was that she needed to help everybody else in order to feel worthy, to feel good, like she's a good person. It's then to be able to meet the need that you feel is lacking within you, that's causing you to put in all that extra work and to never stop and pause. The third insight are the 6 buckets that leave us vulnerable to burnout. So the 6 buckets were work, culture, and that could be outside of work culture. It could be the culture in your town or your community, values. The third was family, and that's early childhood specifically. 4th, health. 5th, traits and states. Those are tendencies and common personality patterns. And 6th was environment, and what she meant by that was sunlight, green, those kind of things. Look at all those 6 buckets to be able to determine what are the BPFs, the burnout protection factors. And in those, don't judge yourself based off of how much you need. You might need more than the other person, just like she said, one person may need suntan lotion more than another. Next, we have our actionable takeaways. First of 3. Number 1, cultivate interoception. And she said, start small, start simple, like peeing when you have to pee or eating when you're hungry, to not put that off, to be able to signal to your body, hey, I got you. Second actionable takeaway, meet yourself where you are. It may not be the best thing for you to jump into positive thinking and gratitude if you're in a tough place. It may be best to just address where you are, to acknowledge the struggle, and to then meet those needs before you get into, let's say, a gratitude practice. And the third actionable takeaway, complete a time audit with objectivity, which is to be able to really look at, okay, does this activity need to be done, and what's the value that it brings? It may be that there is a time reduction required, or maybe it has something to do with removing friction, making it more efficient, making it easier. And then to be able to take full ownership of that and realize that you're making a choice in how you're choosing to spend your time. Join us on Friday's episode. I'm going to do a deeper dive into a practice of interoception. While I love the idea that Cait brought in, we didn't have a chance to really dive into what are some ways where you can really practice bringing your attention into your body and noticing the needs in the moment. Look, we can talk about this stuff all day. We can get into theory. We can get into what we know we need to do. But if you don't do it, if you don't practice it, you never build up the skill set. You never really change. And I want for everyone listening to really make a transformation. So I'm going to guide you through practices that I've shared with leaders all over the world at Fortune 500 companies that has proven to yield results. So we're going to go through that on Friday in our shorter episode. So until next time, thank you so much for listening.